5 commonly overlooked things when it comes to retirement planning, especially for federal employees. That's what we're talking about here in the video today. Now, most feds, good at running the numbers, kind of determining what they might have coming in when they decide to make the leap to retirement. But what we see over and over again are some common things that get overlooked. And that's what I'm going to touch on in the video here today, give you a little bit of a view from a financial planner. So I'm going to keep this short, sweet, high level. Let's get right into it. First one on my list, failing to incorporate cost of living adjustments. Okay, so this one's pretty big, especially if you're considering an early retirement than maybe you'd anticipated. So if you're going out, somewhere between 55 and 60, which might be early, maybe you took a Vera offer. Keep in mind the first pension does not get cost of living adjustments until you hit 62. So those gap years before you hit 62, essentially what happens is you take a permanent reduction to your purchasing power. Your first pension, it's going to stay the same until you hit that age 62. So give you a little bit of an example here. We got to look at this from 2 angles, from expenses as well as from an income standpoint. Let's say you spend $5,000 a month. Okay. Inflation runs at 3.5% over the next 5 years. That $5,000 turns into $5,938. Okay. So almost $1,000 increase in your expenses over that 5-year time period. That's significant, right? $12,000 a year probably. Now let's look at it from an income standpoint. Let's say your first pension was 40 grand a year. Same 3.5% inflation rate over the 5-year period. Now the purchasing power of that 40 grand is reduced to $33,473. So more than $6,500 come off, your purchasing power in that same 5-year time period. And that's a permanent reduction. So incorporating these concepts into your thinking, into your planning is essential, right? So if you're going to take that early retirement, say go for it, but make sure we're able to plan around these cost of living adjustments, because if you're considering that early retirement or just any retirement, keep in mind how COLAs work. And what's your plan to address them, to give yourself pay raises to match the increasing prices that we're probably going to see in the future. All right, number 2, managing investments to create a sustainable income strategy. That sounds pretty wordy, right? That's a real financial advisor thing to say. But what I'm trying to say here is managing your investments to create income, create security, stability, make your money last over a long period of time, right? So if we're talking, especially if we're talking about an earlier retirement, could have a 30-year plus period of time where we're looking to withdraw money from your investment portfolio. That's a long time, and it puts a lot of stress and pressure on that particular investment portfolio, okay? It gets a little bit tricky. Now, the accumulation phase is one thing, right? So this is, while you're working, contributing to your accounts, that's what we call the accumulation phase. You're playing offense the entire time. Okay, that's the best analogy I can give it. And when we get to retirement and you're thinking about turning that switch on where you're going to start drawing income from your investments, now you're going from playing offense full time to playing both offense and defense. And you got to play them both at a high level, right? Because one, you need defense because this money has to last for an extended period of time. So you need security and stability in the approach, but you also need offense to cover those pesky cost of living adjustments that I just talked about. So your portfolio can keep up with what's happening with inflation, give you a little bit of growth on top of what you're spending. It gets to be a little bit tricky here. And one of the big things that we're seeing right now, this is not investment advice by any means, it's just for education and information. We're seeing a lot of folks with a lot of equity exposure as they get into this time period where they're thinking, I'm probably going to have to start drawing down my investment portfolio in the very near future. That creates some significant risks and challenges for them that they might not be thinking or recognizing at the moment. So what can you do? Leveraging buckets can help. Investigating the universe of investments. There's a lot of investments and they need to be put together in the right way, a disciplined approach, understanding the different types of investments that exist in that wide universe that's out there, how to put them together, to create this plan that's going to give you the opportunity to play both offense and defense at a high level. That's really what we want to do here. If you can do that, it can give you the opportunity to, make your money last over that long period of time and give yourself cost of living adjustments that we need. All right, third on the list, taking money early from your investment portfolio. I'm going to keep this short and sweet and high level. As I mentioned, I wanted to keep the entire video, but this one's important and it often gets brushed aside as not that big of a deal. But if you're thinking about taking money from your investment portfolio as early as 55, 56, 57, under one of these early offers, there's a significant set of challenges and risks involved with that. First of all, you got the opportunity cost of lost portfolio growth, which, we just talked about how important it is to try to keep up with COLAs. By taking a 4 or 5% distribution, you're limiting the amount of growth that the portfolio could have if it's invested properly and you're able to get investment returns. So that's one thing. The sequence of returns is also another risk that you have to plan for. So what the market does in those first few years after you retire, very important to the long-term health of your portfolio. All throughout retirement, the sequence of returns is going to be important depending on how much money you're taking, when you're taking it. So it's kind of a balancing act in making sure you have the right mix there to mitigate some of that risk. If you do need to start drawing down your portfolio, and if you're able to keep that percentage to a smaller amount, that can be helpful from a long-term standpoint. I'm not going to get into the numbers here. I just want to reiterate, how important that concept is, to think through it carefully, what your plan is if you're taking money a little bit earlier than maybe you'd like to from your investment portfolio. Fourth on my list, not understanding how to think through Social Security decisions. So one of the default options has just become, I'm going to take Social Security at 62, which could be fine, could perfectly be fine. Social Security is tricky because we don't know the longevity aspect of it, right? No one knows the answer to that question. But here's the thing. So taking it at 62 has an impact on spousal and survivor benefits. So those are things that you need to consider carefully if that's part of your long-term planning, incorporating a spouse and what their benefits may or may not look like within that long-term retirement plan. Okay. So just thinking through it, making good decisions there, rather than just kind of going with the default option, thinking this sounds good, I'm going to go for it. All right. I said 5, but I guess I got 6. I don't know. These two could really be combined. Groupthink, that's what I'm going to go with for number 5. So just because someone else is doing something does not mean it's appropriate for your situation. Too often, we as humans, myself included, we kind of get sucked into the groupthink and, if this is what the crowd is doing, then it must be okay. So, retirement planning is uniquely personal, right? It's incredibly personal. And so your situation under the deferred resignation offer, VERA offer, could be much different than your coworkers or your neighbors. If you're 61 and you've got 3 months until you're hitting 62, it might be a no-brainer to take the offers and head out in federal service and retire from your federal career. You're ready financially otherwise as well, versus, maybe you're 55 and there's a little bit of work left to do before you're financially ready. Okay. Now I say that, and the groupthink is one thing that we want to be leery of, but the last one, which I guess is number 6, but it's technically number 5 as well, is just appreciating the opportunity cost on both sides of the equation here, staying too long and not staying long enough. Because I don't want to just make this video all about you got to stay and continue to work longer or accumulate more assets, because there's a big part of this. Human beings, we're pretty adaptable. So I think we can make a lot of situations work for us if we just change our expectations and our priorities. So there's risks on both sides of that, right? So your time, how much is your time worth? It's the most valuable thing that we have. So making a decision based on that is important. It's not the only consideration, of course. Balancing that with the other side of it, which is, do I have enough assets and income sources to support me to live the lifestyle that I want? Or am I willing to, make some adjustments? So understanding and balancing those things, I think is pretty important. That's my list of 5 to 6 things, just, what we're seeing right now and kind of what we're helping people, what we're trying to help people work through. So if you're working on something, would love to hear from you. Love to hear your questions, be a resource. Remember, you don't have to make these kind of big retirement decisions alone. Reach out, use us, leverage us. So I hope you've seen some value here. If you have, give us a like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.